The Punic Wars. This was a series of 3 epic conflicts between the 2 great powers of the ancient Mediterranean, the Roman Republic and the Carthaginian Empire. The core of the rivalry was the struggle for control over the strategically vital island of Sicily and dominance over Mediterranean trade. The most renowned moment came during the Second Punic War, when the brilliant Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca led his army, complete with war elephants, on a daring march across the Alps to strike at the heart of Italy. Despite Hannibal's genius, Rome ultimately prevailed. The final war ended with the complete destruction of Carthage, solidifying Rome's status as the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean and allowing it to build a lasting empire. The Crusades. These were a series of religious wars initiated by European Christians with the stated goal of reclaiming the Holy Land from Muslim rule. Fought over approximately 2 centuries, the motivations were a complex mix of religious fervor, political ambition, and the pursuit of wealth. While the Crusades ultimately failed to establish permanent Christian control of the Holy Land, they had profound and lasting consequences. They stimulated economic growth in Europe by creating new trade routes with the Middle East, introducing goods like spices, silk, and sugar to the West. This era also led to a significant exchange of knowledge in mathematics, medicine, and architecture between Europe and the Islamic world. The Mongol invasions. Under the leadership of the formidable Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongol Empire became the largest contiguous land empire in history. Stretching from Asia to Europe, their conquests were often characterized by extreme brutality, but the subsequent period of stability, known as the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, had a transformative effect. This era of peace secured the Silk Road, making it safer for merchants and travelers. The result was an unprecedented flourishing of trade and communication between the East and West, facilitating the exchange of goods, technologies, and ideas across continents. 100 Years' War. This prolonged struggle between the kingdoms of England and France was fought over claims to the French throne. The conflict was not a continuous war, but a series of brutal campaigns that spanned over a century. It became famous for the introduction of devastating new weapons, like the English longbow, which could pierce knightly armor. A defining figure of the war was the young French peasant, Joan of Arc, who, believing she was guided by divine visions, inspired the demoralized French army and led them to pivotal victories. Her leadership was a major turning point, boosting French morale and paving the way for their final triumph. In the end, France emerged victorious, expelling the English from its territories and consolidating its power into a stronger, more unified nation. The 30 Years' War. One of the longest and most destructive conflicts in European history, the 30 Years' War resulted in an estimated 4.5 to 8 million deaths from battle, famine, and disease. It began as a religious war within the Holy Roman Empire between Catholic and Protestant states, but soon spiraled into a continent-wide political struggle for power. The war finally ended with the signing of the Peace of Westphalia. This collection of treaties was monumental, as it established the modern concept of state sovereignty, the idea that each nation has the right to govern its own territory without external interference. The Napoleonic Wars. Following the French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte, a brilliant military general, rose to become Emperor of France and conquered a vast portion of Europe. The wars he waged were on an immense scale. His downfall began with a catastrophic invasion of Russia in 1812, which decimated his grand army. A coalition of European powers seized the opportunity, ultimately defeating him at the famous Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Though his empire was short-lived, the Napoleonic Wars had a profound impact, spreading the revolutionary ideas of liberty, equality, fraternity, and fueling the rise of nationalism across the continent. The American Civil War. This brutal conflict erupted between the northern states, known as the Union, and 11 southern states that seceded to form the Confederacy. The central cause of the war was the Confederacy's insistence on preserving the institution of slavery. It was a devastatingly bloody war, and one of the first to be shaped by industrial-era technology like railroads and the telegraph, which transformed logistics and communication. The Union's victory preserved the United States as a single country, and, most importantly, led to the abolition of slavery. World War I. Dubbed the Great War, this was a global conflict of unprecedented scale. It was triggered by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, but its roots lay in a complex web of militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. The war is infamously remembered for its brutal trench warfare on the Western Front, where soldiers endured horrific conditions in vast networks of ditches. Millions were killed in futile charges across no man's land. The conflict led to the collapse of the German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, and Ottoman empires, and a staggering death toll of over 8.5 million soldiers. World War II. This was the deadliest conflict in human history, with an estimated 70 to 85 million fatalities. The war pitted the Axis powers led by Germany, Italy, and Japan against the Allies, which included Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and the United States. The conflict was truly global, with fighting on land, at sea, and in the air across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. It encompassed the unimaginable horror of the Holocaust and concluded after the United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The aftermath saw the rise of the US and the Soviet Union as two rival superpowers, setting the stage for a new global order, the Cold War. After World War II, the world was split into two ideological blocs, leading to a prolonged period of geopolitical tension between the capitalist United States and the communist Soviet Union. It was called a Cold War because the superpowers never engaged in direct, large-scale combat with each other, largely due to the terrifying threat of mutual nuclear annihilation. Instead, they engaged in an arms race, a space race, and fought proxy wars in other nations such as Korea and Vietnam by supporting opposing sides in regional conflicts. This global ideological standoff shaped international politics for nearly half a century.